Hello, everyone. In the following series of videos, I will walk through the second part of our financial modeling, which is the three financial statements models. So in this video, I will focus on income statement. Basically, we will input the historical income statements information, and then we're going to starting to make assumptions and then projected the values for the income statements of Amazon. Okay. So as we already walked through this in class, so basically we're gonna just need to go to either SEC or go to admin SEC website that I showed you that we can starting to locate the 2020 Amazon's 10K report and then find the financial statements. I'm sorry. Let's go ahead and locate the financial statements for fiscal year 2020. So financial statements. And then we're going to locate the financial consolidated statement of operation. So basically what we're going to do here is, oh, I'm sorry. Is we're going to just go ahead and input values for historical years, and then we're going to starting to make assumptions based on the historical numbers. So most part of the Amazon's income statements are pretty straightforward. We hard coded all the like a single items values, and then we do need to resolve those totals, and then we can copy the formulas for the projected years. So let's get started. We have a product sales 2018, and then we have 19, and we have 2020, and we input the net sales, net service sales. So for the total net sales, we don't hard code it here. We just take a sum, we solve here in our model, and we do need to have to do our due diligence. It's just like if we solve those subtotals, you do need to compare this value with the actually 10K filings. If the numbers are different, then you do need to go back to check, see if you input anything wrong, okay? And as I said, once we have this formula set up, actually you can just go ahead. Oh, this one, we don't do that because we do need to project those values for the sales. And then we continue with cost of sales. So whenever you set up or input your financial statements, make sure that the financial statement setup should be consistent. So for our version here, we're going to keep all the expenses positive. And then when we're calculating those profit margins, those returns, we're just using the previous like a return on sales subtract the expense. There are certain places we do need to make an adjustment for the sign. Keep that in mind. For our version here, we're going to keep all the expenses positive. If there is other income, we're going to keep it negative. Okay. So for cost of sales, and then we can go ahead calculating gross profits using the net sales, subtract the cost of sales, and we can actually go ahead fill the formulas all the way to 2028. We're going to project next 5 years, but we don't project the profits. We project the sales, we project cost of sales, and then we're calculating the gross profit. Okay, so apparently here on Amazon's 10K, we don't have a gross profit. So make sure that even though the model set up a little bit slightly different from what they have here, generally we would like to separate the cost of sales from the operating expenses, because then when we analyze the historical informations, we can focus on the gross profit by only taking the cost of sales into calculations. We can, when we analyze like the EBITDA or EBIT, which will be the return by taking operating expenses into calculation. Okay. And then let's continue. We have a fulfillment here. We have a technology and content. And then we have marketing. We have general general and administrative. Have other operating. Okay, and then we can just take a sum of all the operating expenses. This is the part, since Amazon already gave us the operating expenses here, we can do a fact check here. Oh, actually, you do need to make adjustment there because their operating expenses are including the cost of sales. Okay, so let's keep our model input, and eventually when we finish this EBIT, which is operating income, we should be able to do a fact check, see if anything are wrong. So apparently our version is a little bit different. You see that we do want to have a separate line for the EBITDA, is because when we move to the valuation models, we do need the information about the EBITDA. And also for a lot of financial analysis, we do want to assess the returns focusing on the cash items. So when we have the operating income or the EBIT, is technically speaking is a non-cash return, is because we're taking out the D&A, which is non-cash expenses. So when we try to value in the company, we will focusing on the cash return, which means we should add those non-cash expense back to get the return, which is EBITDA. Okay. So apparently, we don't have a depreciation here. We don't have EBITDA here, but we do have information. If you scroll back to the statement of cash flow, we do have information related to D&A from the cash flow statements. So that's where we're going to find the information for D&A. So we have 15,341 for 18. Okay. And then apparently, if we want to calculating EBITDA, we should use gross profit, subtract the operating expenses. But that's going to give you a wrong EBITDA. The reason of that is because since the income statement or the consolidated statement of operations, specifically for Amazon filings here, did not explicitly list out the D&A as our operating expenses. But although we don't see D&A here under the operating expenses, but it not necessarily mean that D&A has not been taken out. So actually the D&A has been hidden under certain operating expenses here. So when we calculate operating income, or when they list out this operating income in the 10K filings, actually they did take out the D&A. But when we calculating depreciation, earning before tax, the EBITDA here, we do want to exclude the D&A to get earning calculations. So since this D&A has been hidden somewhere, one good way to figure that out is to do a keyword search in their 10K filings, see if you can locate any items that including that hidden D&A cost under operating expenses. So let's just do a keyword search for depreciations. Once we've done that, let's just quickly screening all the things we find here. So totally there are 18 places in this 10K filings mentioning about depreciation. And we want to find specifically what are the things are hidden or including the depreciation. So for AWS, this is not related to specific operating expenses item. So first time it pop up, it will be the technology and the contents. We do have a technology contents operating expenses on income statements. And we know that part of this technology content operating expenses include that depreciation, infrastructure cost, including servers, networking equipment, data centers related to depreciation, amortization. If you keep searching, now we already have good candidates, but if you keep searching, there may be other places. They also mentioned about the depreciation, at least you see that under general and administrative, this is like this expense primarily consists of cost of corporate functions, including payroll, related expenses, facility, equipment expenses, such as depreciation. So that means depreciation amortization is hidden under both technology content and the general administrative. And if we keep searching, and of course, it's related to PPE and the financial obligations. So apparently for our search result here, we have two good candidates here for technology content and the general and administrative. But we don't have a specific value, how much depreciation cost is coming from here, how much is coming from there. And again, eventually, which one you choose will not affect our valuation model. So since this is the first candidate pop-up in the 10K filings, let's just including this depreciation or excluding the depreciation out of this technology and the contents, meaning that we do need to make a little bit adjustment. So this is the extra technology and content operating expenses, and we know part of that is including the depreciation amortization. So let's just subtract this depreciation amortizations here to get the correct calculation or correct values for our income statements. So it's going to equal to that cost to subtract the depreciation amortization. Once we've done that, we can calculating the EBITDA by using the gross profits, subtract the operating expenses. And remember that after we make that adjustment, this operating expenses is already excluded depreciation amortization. So one way to check whether our calculation is correct or not, since we have the EBITDA, we do have the depreciation amortization listed in the cash flow statements, we can go ahead calculating EBIT by taking out the D&A. So that is equal to your EBITDA subtract your depreciation amortization, and that will give you the operating income. And then what we can do here is we can go back to the income statements. Let's just go back to the financial statements. To find operating income. So this will be the operating income for past 3 years. So compare this number with the one we calculated, that's correct. So that means like our adjustment here to derive this EBITDA is correct, okay? And then let's continue our calculations. Apparently, next couple rows are related to interest income, interest expenses, but there's another items called other income, which is not related to interest expense and income. So we're going to extract this row out first, and then we're going to keep these two rows together because those are linked with your debt values or cash values. So this is where this other income row come from. But remember that I said that your financial statement setup should be consistent since we list out all the expenses positive here. So on their 10K filings, apparently for this other income, they list out things in the parentheses is expense and the things positive is the income. So we're going to convert the sign to an opposite way, meaning that 2018, that $183 million, since this is expense, we're going to keep it positive in our financial statements here, but eventually the calculation is going to be the same. We're going to subtract this and to direct the correct value. So that means for 2019 and 2020, since those two are positive on the 10K filing, those are the income. So we're going to list as a negative value. And then we have this row done. Then let's move to the interest expense and interest income. Same logic here. You see that the Amazon 10K filing lists out expenses as negative value, shows on in the parentheses. In our financial statements, we want to be consistent. We list all the expense as positive. So let's just keep it positive. And we're going to convert the income to negative value. And again, it doesn't matter how you adjust the sign, your numbers should match what they filed, all those earnings should match. So let's just double check, see if that's correct. Once we have the interest income, interest expense, let's just adding these two rows together to get the total interest expenses. And then we can calculating earning before tax by using the EBIT, which is operating income. We subtract the other income and subtract the net interest expense to derive the earning before tax. And again, now is another part or checkpoint. You can compare this earning with the one filed on the 10K earning before tax. Our number matched the number in the filing, so that means our calculations are correct. And then let's move to the tax part. Same logic here. On the 10K filing, they list all the tax expenses inside the parentheses as a negative value. Our format here, we're going to keep the expenses positive, and then we're going to subtract that. So let's just convert it to positive number for the tax expenses. And then we're going to use that, subtract the taxes. I'm sorry. To derive the earning from operating operation, a continuing operation. So I know there are discrepancies for the setup here. So apparently after the expenses, they also including this equity method investment activity net tax. So basically this will be the cost expenses and the return that the companies are able to generate it based on their investment. So since this is not related to their operation, we're going to move this line of items to the following or below the net income from operation. Sometimes when we try to assess the company's financials or profitabilities, we will focusing on continuing operations for whatever the actual returns. It's going to be, I'm not going to say this is going to be a one-time things, but it's going to be really inconsistent throughout the years. It depends on how much investment they are making. And there are different factors driven by those intentions for the investment, which we cannot find out from the 10K filing. So we try to separate those items from the continuing operations to get a sense. What is the net income generated by doing the business? And then we can still calculating the net income afterwards by including those like non-recurring events or non-operation related events. Okay. So for our setup here, we also have several rows for the non-recurring events. The only reason we set up this one is because you don't see this type of items on the Amazon financial statements. But once we move to later stage for the valuation, specifically for relative valuations, we may want to set up the form the financial statements with for our competitors. So maybe some of our competitors do have those certain roles, some don't. So you can set up this as like a kind of like a unified template. If we don't have it like Amazon, we can just simply just give it 0 to all of those value. So we know that doesn't matter whether doesn't matter how we set up, whether we have those items or not, it would not affect our calculation. Okay. But it's going to be really convenient if you set up your model this way. Then later on, you find out your competitors have this. You can just borrow this template directly. You don't have to, keep deleting or adding rows when you move to other companies' analysis. So once we get this done, apparently we're going to just using this net income from continuing operations, subtract this non-recurring event. The value is 0, so the value should be same. And now we can starting to plug in the equity method invested activity net tax. Okay, so here same idea. We do want to keep the expenses as the positive and the income as negative. So what we're gonna do here, we're gonna give a negative sign to those positive number, and then we're gonna keep the negative value positive compared to the 10K report. And for the dividends, yeah, Amazon doesn't have a dividends payment here, but again, you can set up this template, just give it 0 for Amazon, but maybe your competitor companies do have this row. You don't have to keep adding or deleting rows. Now what we can do here, we're going to just using the net income here, subtract these two, and you will have your net income, which should match the reported net income, which is this row. Okay. And then the last thing we need to do here is to get the value for earning per share and shares outstanding. So apparently we do given the shares outstanding for both basic and diluted shares. This is the part we should hard coded those number. But for earning per share, we do want to calculate it in our model, meaning that once we have this plug-in, what we can do here. So basically your earning per share is calculated by using the net income divided by shares outstanding. So for the basic one, we're going to just using the net income. I'm going to lock this row because for a diluted earning per share, it's going to be the same numerator. The denominator is going to be different. So I'm going to keep the same numerator for the same row. We don't lock the cell because different columns, different year, you're going to have different net income. Use that divided by basic shares outstanding. I have my earning per share calculated. And again, you can double check with this earning per share from the 10K report, see if it's matched. Sometimes you're going to end up with some discrepancy like this one, $20.15 I calculated in my model, $20.14 in the 10K filing, which is fine because since we input those values by using this 10K filings, so technically speaking, we're ignoring everything after this like a 5. So it's going to be some rounding issues or rounding discrepancies between the actual value. So technically speaking, for their net product sales, it may not be exactly $141 and $915 million. There might be some additional digit after this one, which going to cost this earning per share change a little bit. But again, doesn't matter. You end up with the correct, the exactly the same one or a little bit different one. you do need to calculate those earnings per shares by using your net income and the shares outstanding. Okay, so this will complete this like a historical income statements input. Then I'm gonna just expand that, because next step, what we're gonna do is we're gonna starting to project the future income statements. So I already set up my model assumptions tab here for all three financial statements. Apparently, we're going to focus on the income statement projections for this part of the lecture. So let's get started. So basically what we're going to do is like, first, we're going to calculate what is the year-over-year sales growth rate for the product sales and service sales. And the reason we don't have a 2018 information is because if you want to calculate in 2018 sales growth rate, you do need to gather the 2017 income statement, which we don't have it here. So therefore, what we're going to do here, we're going to just simply using 2019 product sales divided by 2018 product sales minus 1 to get the growth rate. So meaning that from 2018 to 2019, our product sales increased by 13%. And then we can just highlight this 2 columns and the 2 rows, fill right, fill down. So this tells us from 2018 to 2019, the product, the service sales increased by 32%. And actually, we can actually copy down one more, because the order of these 3 rows are set up exactly the same order as these 3 rows. So basically, when we copy and paste, again, double check your calculation for this growth rate. It's supposed to be the year-over-year growth rate for total net sales from 19 to 2020. So we use G10 divided by F10. So let's go back here, G10. So that's correct one. We use this one divided by this one minus 1 to get the sales growth rate. Okay. And then since we already demonstrated this in class, and I'm not going to plot that screenshot anymore. So basically, starting from the projections for future years, we only have 2 years information here. We're really not going to be able to tell much whether we're going to need to project this at a certain percentage. And so what we can do is one free resource. We can use Yahoo Finance, which is introduced by the book. So based on Yahoo Finance information, based on several financial analyst projections, they project 2021, this Amazon net sales is going to increase by 27%, and 2022 is going to increase by 18.6%. So we're going to use the financial analyst projections as a guidance here. And then we're going to make a little bit twist or adjustment for other years' projections. And then we will be able to project the net sales in the income statements. Okay, so what we can do here is, if this projection from financial analysts are true, let's just calculating how much change actually based on the growth rate change. Okay, so they'll be using the 2021 growth rate divided by 2020 growth rate minus 1. And apparently, we see that based on the other financial analyst analysis, they feel like they expect the next year, the growth rate for our total sales of Amazon gonna starting to decrease a little bit. So it's gonna slow down, still gonna decrease, because this 27% tells you that they're still gonna manage to increase their sales from 2020 to 2021. But that magnitude of the growth going to be smaller than the previous year's growth rate. Okay, and we can do the same calculations. So based on their projections, they continue to expect that this sales growth rate going to be scaling back from 2021 to 2022. So of course, you do need to conduct your own research and try to compare like what's the resource or guidance that provided by the company, show this expectations. But for the simplicity for this demonstration video, we're going to just keep what we discuss in class. So if we believe this is going to be the trend, then let's just keep the same trend for the growth rate change. So we're going to expect that this sales growth rate is going to starting to, decreasing by 31.1% year over year. So that means like next year, we're still going to be able to grow the sales, but it's not as high as 18.6%. So use that, multiply by 1 plus this negative value. So that means like based on this assumptions that we expect the 2023 from 22 to 23, Amazon are going to be able to increase their sales by 12%, which is not as high as the previous year sales growth rate. And then we're going to keep this the trend continue for future years. Once we have this done, basically we can just back solve what is the our model implied the net sales for our next 5 years. So we come back here, that's going to equal to your previous year, and then multiply by 1 plus the sales growth rate we projected in the model assumption tab. And we get the net sales projected for the next 5 years. Okay, and then let's move on to the next term. What we're going to do, how we're going to be able to assess like cost of goods sold. So technically speaking, the cost of goods sold are the direct cost related to our sales. The more product that you're trying to sell, it's going to cost you more to produce the product. So since this is going to be directly related to the change of the sales, let's just first assess what is the historical cost of sales as a percentage of the net sales. So this is going to equal to your cost of sales divided by total net sales, and we get the percentage here. And by looking at the trend here, we see that it seems like, yeah, again, this is the part I also mentioned in class. This 3 years, you may not be able to tell much what is the trend, how things change. You can argue it seems like it's remained pretty much constant, around 59 to 60%. So you can take average. Remember, there are 7 methods we discussed in class. You can take an average. You can do a like cycle. You can do minimum, maximum. But it all depends on your research of the company, okay? To be a simple assumptions here, let's just streamline this percentage for future years. Once we have this assumptions done, what we can do here, you can just come back, use your projected net sales, and multiply by this projected percentage. You get your cost of sales projected. The reason we use net sales is because when we calculating the historical percentage, we divide it by sales. So that means 60.4% of sales is going to be the cost of sales. So that means whatever the projected net sales is going to be, 60.4% of that is going to be the cost of sales. That's why we calculate in this way. And since we already copied the formulas for gross profit from previous year, then we can just go ahead calculating the gross profit margin. That is equal to gross profit divided by net sales. You get the gross profit margin. And of course, it's not necessary to do this in this model assumption tab or in your three financial models. So sometimes one reason we may do this at the beginning is because we may not have much information to project cost of sales, but maybe we do provided by with some guidance from the company's management. This is like, we expect that our gross profit margin going to remain the same, or it's going to become even higher next future year compared to the previous year. Then you're probably going to start your projections with the gross profit margin first, and then you back solve the cost of sales by using your net sales minus gross profit. Okay, so there are always going to be different ways to do that, is because different companies, we're going to have a different information. Do not assume you're going to be all set. If you understand how to do Amazon, you're going to be able to understand all the other companies. Here, for this Amazon example, just give you a guidance, try to help you to set up the correct mindset, like what you need to think about it, what would be the reasonable things you need to assess to make certain assumptions. Okay, once we've done that, let's move to the operating expenses sections here. So apparently, all the operating expenses here we have, again, since this is operating expenses directly related to our operations, so those are the items or expenses also directly related to the change of sales. So if you see there's an increasing of sales, for example, for the like a general administrative, that's the money you pay for your employees. So maybe at a certain point you want to expand your business, you increase your sales, you don't have enough like people to work for you, then you do need to starting to hire people. But think this from the other side is just like normally the company will not starting to hiring people without thinking about the increasing sales. Okay, so if you understand the logic there, so basically what we're gonna do is we're gonna do the same thing as the cost of sales. We're gonna calculating all of these operating expenses as a percentage of net sales, and then make assumptions based on the historical information. So what are we gonna do here? We're gonna come back, find the fulfillment, and divide it by net sales. And here you have to starting to think about shortcut. Since all the operating expenses items, we're gonna assess that by calculating as a percentage of sales. So that means like the denominator is gonna be the same for all those percentage calculations. So that means we can just anchor the denominator in a certain way. So for sure, we do not want to anchor this single sale because we know that net sales is changing year over year. So that means we will let the column change, but eventually we're always going to refer back to the same row. So we're going to anchor the row. That's why you see there's a dollar sign in front of the 10. There's no dollar sign in front of E. okay? Once we've done that, let me just make sure I got it correct. So this one divided by net sales, let's anchor this twice by locking the rows. And then once we've done that, we can basically just highlight these whole sections, fill the calculation to the right, and then done. Again, every time you do a shortcut, double check. Let's check this general and administrative for 2020. This is equal to G18 divided by G10. So first of all, we come back here. G is the correct column because we've assessed 2020. So then next one, G18, that's the correct rows divided by G10. That's correct. So now we know that everything we just assumed we calculated are correct. And then we're going to do the same thing. Again, if you have more historical information, you can assess the trend there. But apparently, the operating expenses are kind of looking like a consistent in the past 3 years. So we're going to do the same thing as the cost of sales. We're going to just streamline that from previous year. And we get our projections done. Once we got this done, apparently we can come back here, and this is equal to the sales. We're going to use sales multiplied by all those percentage. So meaning that we're going to multiply by the same sales for all different items under operating expenses. So let's just anchor this twice. Same logic. We're only going to lock the row because different years, the sales is going to change. Use that and then multiply by the percentage. I got this fulfillment projected for 2021. Okay. Once we've done that, yeah, you can highlight this fill right, fill down, which gonna delete this like this lines because it's gonna mess up the model format. And there's another way we can do is like we can copy Control C or Command C on Mac, and then we can highlight the whole section, and then we can paste the special. If you right click your mouse, you can paste the special. Let's just paste the formula and the number formatting. Then we got the number done without affecting or changing the format of the model. Okay, so this will be the projected operating expenses. And then what we can do here, we can basically just take a sum and calculating the operating expenses. And then we can calculating what is EBITDA. Basically, technically speaking, we can just go ahead and copy the formulas over. Okay, once we get the EBITDA done, of course, we can come back here to calculating our EBITDA margin by using the EBITDA divided by net sales. And the logic here is, again, this also is a good place to check whether your assumptions of your expenses, your sales is making sense. At least based on our assumptions, we do see that the EBITDA margin doesn't change, which may not be true in the real world, but at least it's close to what happened in the past years. As I said, maybe you do have access to certain research showed you that they do have reliable information reflected that the EBITDA margin for the future years going to increasing like 1% year over year. Then you can start your projections from EBITDA, and then you can back solve those operating expenses, cost of sales, and etc. Okay. Once we've done that, next we move to the depreciation amortization. Let's take a look for the model assumptions here. What we do for depreciation amortization. Oh, so for Amazon's case, we're going to calculate depreciation and amortization in a separate schedule. So that means we're going to leave this blank. But again, even though we leave certain things blank, it does not necessarily mean we're going to stop here because we can continue calculating our EBIT and other things projected on income statements. So meaning that we're going to using EBITDA, subtract the sale. There's no value, just leave it blank. Once we have the value, we know that for sure this EBIT gonna automatically update it once we have the value here. Okay, then let's continue our projections. Other income. So for the other income here, and let's first just link what happened in the past. So first of all, everything below EBIT is going to be related to cost or returns, not really related to our core operations. So again, follow by the book. There are 7 different methods. You can do minimum, maximum, and you can even do a cycle or straight line from previous year. But as I said in class, don't be too hard on yourself. This is going to be hard to project because first you do need to perform like a keyword search in the income statement, see if they do provide you specific information, what are the things under other income. And even with that, again, this is not related to your operations, so it's going to be hard for you to project that. So based on our book, the author's assessment, what author choose is eventually the author choose to take cycle from the previous information, but by excluding 2020. So we all know what happened in 2020. So 2020 is a COVID year. For most companies, financial analysis, we should not using 2020 financial as a benchmark because everything is different work during the COVID period. So what author recommended is let's take a cycle, but excluding the 2020 other income. So meaning that 2021 going to equal to 2020, 2018. 2022 going to equal to 2019. And for 2023, we're going to just link back to 2021. Then we can just go ahead and fill right. You see, we do the cycle. We let this value change year over year by matching what happened in the past years, but we exclude the COVID year. Once we got this done, we can come back to link our assumptions from the assumptions model. And then for the expense interest income, we're going to calculating or estimate those values from the debt schedule. So we'll leave it blank for now. But again, for this total, the net interest expense, we can still calculating those by taking a sum of these two rows. After we've done that, we can continue calculation the earning before tax by using the EBIT. We're going to subtract this other income, subtract the net interest expense. We got this value calculated. So apparently our value is significantly, this like earning before tax significantly different from previous year, which is okay. Is because remember that we still don't have the value for D&A. We don't have the value for interest income and expenses. It's eventually will be updated once we finish the depreciation schedule and the debt schedule. Okay, we can continue our calculations and then interest income tax expenses. Let's just go back here. First, let's just assess what is the effective tax rate. Oh, let's calculate this earning before tax margin first. This is going to equal to your earning before tax divided by total net sales. And this is one profitability ratios that you can assess for a historical financial analysis. And then let's calculating what is the historical effective tax rate. Effective tax rate, there'll be the tax divided by your earning before tax. So for the past 3 years, apparently we see this tax rate change. And if you follow the regulations closely, we know that after 2017, when that Job Act and tax cut coming out, the US company pay a flat 21% corporate tax. But you do see company paying lower than 21% is mainly because they also run business internationally. So meaning that wherever they run business at, they're going to pay the local taxes there. So which may going to change their effective tax rate. That's why you see this is not exactly 21%. Okay. So what we're going to do here, and again, this is based on your research and followed by the 7 method introduced by the book. So what author recommended is like, we don't have much information about the tax rate change. And since Amazon is mainly a US company, so let's just use that 21% for now. And of course, later you can come back to update your model once you have more information related to tax. So once we have the project tax rate, we can come back to calculating tax by using the taxable income multiply. Oh, I'm sorry. This is going to equal to taxable income multiplied by your projected tax rate for next 5 years. You get your tax calculated, and then we're just using taxable income, subtract the taxes. We will get the net income from continuation operations calculated. And then, well, we are going to move to that big sections, which we really don't have the values for Amazon, but still, you have to make sure that you complete your model. So what we can do here, let's just go ahead link from our model here. And since we don't have those values, what we can do, we can just go ahead straight line that from previous year. And then we're going to link this back from the model assumption. Let's do a copy and paste special formula and format. And then we can calculating what is the total, and by taking a sum. And next we can calculating the net income. Using net income, subtract this non-recurring event to get net income after a non-recurring event. Okay, and then we continue move on our equity method investment activity, net taxes. So that will be the same logic here. What we can do is like these are the return or the expenses related to investment outside core business. So we can do 7 method, but since this is not really related to operations, it's really not going to affect our valuation at all in the later stage. So what we can do, we're going to just follow that cycle method we did before. So for this one, we don't see a significant change. So let's just first link that back from the also for the dividends. And then what we're going to do, we're going to just keep it simple. Let's do a cycle from the previous year. And then for the dividends, we're going to just remain the same because there's no dividends payment at all. Okay. And next we come back here. We link those to projected value. And then it's calculating net income based on our projection. That will be net income after non-recurring event, subtract this, subtract the dividends, and you get the net income projected. Again, this is significantly higher than previous year. Is the main reason of that is because we haven't got the depreciation and the interest expenses and income done yet. Okay, but still set up your formula, set up your calculations whenever you can do that. Okay. Then the only thing left will be the shares and the earning per share. We know that in the previous, when we input the historical information, we didn't hard coded that for the earning per share. We basically just calculated. So basically what we can do, we can just copy the formula. The formula we use is the net income. Let's highlight the rows here, divided by basic shares. If we do this way, then we can basically just fill right, fill down. Don't worry, you have error signs there, because once we plug in the basic share and the diluted shares, it will automatically update. Okay. So for this one, where we're gonna go is when the book was written, the companies Amazon already filed their 10K 2020, and they also filed their Q1 2021. So to get the information about the shares outstanding, I would say the most reliable resource will be just go to the 10Q first. So let's go back there, find the 2021 Q1. And apparently, like there are various places that on the filings, you will be able to find the shares outstanding. So the first place will be the first page on the bottom. They will show you what is the common, or what is the basic shares outstanding. So what we get here, the shares outstanding for Amazon by the end of the first quarter is this amount. So what we're gonna do is we're gonna come back to the model, go to the model assumptions. Let's just go ahead and plug in that value. So that will be a 504. Okay. So this is actually what's been filed at on their 10Q in 2021 first quarter. But apparently, if you look at this number, compare back to what you have here, the unit of figure apparently is different. So in the previous year, we only have like a 3-digit, which means like everything we plug in here is denominated in millions. Okay. So some companies, they do report their shares outstanding in a different unit of figure. They may report it as denominated in thousands. So make sure whenever you plug in the value back here, you have to be consistent. So apparently for Amazon, we do list out things as in millions. So when we plug in this number, we know that this is going to be like a 504 million and plus some changes there. So what we can do here, let's just give keep everything as a decimals after 504. Then this will give you the correct unit of figure. Okay. And then we're going to assume this going to remain the same for all projected years. Now we get the basic shares outstanding projected. If you come back here, we're going to just link that value back here. Now we got this number in. okay? And then for the diluted share, of course, you can go back to your 10Qs under the income statements. You can find the diluted share, or you can go to the 10K, see whether they have like options. We're going to talk about diluted shares later on in our valuation model, especially for the relative valuation model. But for Amazon one, they do give you information that provided by their like earning presentation. So in their earning presentation, they actually showed you that in their Q1 2021 presentation document, they reviewed that there will be 15 million options outstanding, which means we're going to add that 15 million to that basic share, which we just estimated. So we're going to just use plus 15. Again, where this 15 coming from? This is from the Amazon's Q1 2021 earning presentation. There's a presentation slides. They showed you that the basic shares is a 504 and the diluted shares are 15. Okay. Let me just so this is the web slide they give you for that Q1 presentation. You do see that for Q1, the basic shares are 504, and there's additional 15 options stock-based award outstanding are expected to be converted to common stocks. So the diluted share is 519. Okay, so this is where we get that additional 15. Once we get that done, let's come back here. Oh, we don't do that there. We'll do it here. So this is going to equal to this plus 15. And we're going to link this. Now we can come back here to link this diluted share projections to the bottom of our income statements. Once we're done, you do see that your basic and diluted shares earning per share is automatically updated. But again, this number is significantly higher than the previous year. One reason of that is because we haven't plugged in the interest expense, interest income, and the depreciation expenses in yet. Okay. But this will complete this video. Basically, in this video, I walk through how to input the historical information and how to make certain adjustment, like how you're going to be able to derive EBITDA by giving the depreciation amortization informations, and how to calculating the earning per shares for basic and diluted shares. And then we also talk about like what will be the general ways to project the things for on the income statements. And of course, the depreciation, amortization, and interest expenses and the income will come in from separate schedule. Other than that, this will be the end of this video. Let me know if you have any questions. Bye.